The human delegation arrived at the alien capital under a sky filled with slow-moving light clouds. The city below was built in wide circles, each layer rising higher toward the royal spire at the center. From above, it looked calm and beautiful. From the inside, it was a place of power, judgment, and long memory. The human envoy, Elias Ward, stepped down from the shuttle without hesitation. He wore no armor, no weapons, and no symbols of rank beyond a simple insignia on his jacket. He had been chosen for this mission because he was steady, careful, and known for speaking only when words truly mattered. This meeting was important. It was the first official appearance of humanity before the ruling court of the Varelian Empire. Many alien species were watching closely. Some hoped for cooperation, others waited for humans to fail. Elias walked beside alien escorts through tall crystal halls. Every step echoed. Eyes followed him from balconies and shadows. He did not rush. He did not look nervous. He had learned long ago that confidence did not come from noise. The royal court chamber was vast. Pillars shaped like twisting roots held the ceiling high above. At the far end stood the throne platform, raised and glowing with soft energy lines. Around it sat nobles, commanders, scholars, and foreign observers. At the center of it all stood the young alien royal. The royal had recently inherited authority after the sudden death of a parent ruler. Though young, the royal already wore ceremonial armor and the markings of command. The court treated the position seriously. So did Elias. When Elias reached the center of the chamber, he stopped and bowed in the manner agreed upon by both cultures. It was respectful, but equal. For a moment, the court was silent. Then the royal spoke. The voice was sharp and clear, echoing through the chamber. The royal questioned why a human had been sent instead of someone more impressive. The words were calm, but the meaning was cutting. The royal spoke of humanity as new, untested, and fragile. The comments were framed as tradition, but the tone carried mockery. Some nobles shifted uncomfortably. Others watched closely, waiting to see how the human would react. Elias lifted his head slowly. His face remained calm. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. He listened. The royal continued, speaking of human worlds as dangerous, their people as reckless, and their presence in galactic affairs as something to be managed. Each sentence landed like a public judgment. Elias said nothing. To the court, this silence was strange. Most species responded to insults with anger or fear. Humans were known for emotion. Many expected a sharp reply or a visible reaction. Instead, Elias stood still. When the royal finally finished speaking, the chamber waited. Elias took one slow breath. He bowed again, deeper this time not in submission, but in acknowledgement of the court itself. Then he turned around. Without a single word, Elias walked away from the throne. A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. Murmurs spread instantly. Walking away from the royal court without permission was unheard of. Guards stiffened, but did not move. The elders hesitated. No one had prepared for this outcome. Elias walked with steady steps. He did not look back. By the time he exited the chamber, the court was no longer quiet. The young royal stared after him, stunned. The insult had been meant to establish dominance, to show strength before the galaxy. Instead, it had ended the meeting entirely. Outside, Elias returned to the shuttle without incident. No one stopped him. The alien escorts looked uncertain, unsure whether to treat him as a guest or a problem. Back aboard the human vessel, Elias filed his report. It was short. He recorded exactly what had been said and exactly what he had done. No emotion, no accusation, just facts. Human Command reviewed the report in silence. Then they agreed. No protests were sent. No angry messages followed. Humanity did not demand apologies. They simply paused all ongoing talks with the Varelian Empire. The pause was polite. Formal notices were sent. Joint projects were delayed. Advisors were recalled. Trade discussions were postponed until further notice. To outsiders, it looked like routine procedure. To those who understood humans, it meant something else. Within the alien capital, confusion grew. Officials asked why humans had not reacted. Some expected threats. Others expected complaints. None came. Senior elders began to speak in private chambers. They remembered old records, ancient warnings, stories of humans who did not shout or strike, but walked away and let consequences unfold. The young royal felt the change before it was explained. Invitations went unanswered. Advisors from other species grew distant. A quiet tension settled over the court. The royal asked why the human had not defended himself. An elder answered carefully. Humans did not always fight insults with words. Sometimes, silence was their answer. And sometimes, silence meant the end of trust. Far from the alien capital, Elias stood on the observation deck of his ship, watching stars drift past. He felt no anger, only certainty. Respect could not be forced, and humanity would not beg for it. The first move had already been made, not with weapons or speeches, but with a simple choice to walk away, and the galaxy had begun to notice. In the days after Elias Ward left the royal court, the Varelian Empire waited for something to happen. The young royal expected a protest, a message, or at least a sharp reply. None came. The human channels remained polite, distant, and quiet. At first, the court believed this calm meant weakness. Then the reports began to arrive. A trade overseer informed the council that a joint supply route had been paused. No reason was given beyond pending review. A research minister reported that human specialists had quietly returned to their own systems. Shared stations were left clean, organized, and empty. No accusations were made. No doors were slammed. The humans had simply stepped back. The elders gathered in a private chamber beneath the throne hall. The walls there were older than the empire itself, marked with symbols of past triumphs and forgotten warnings. The young royal was summoned to attend. One elder spoke first, choosing words with care. The human envoy's departure had not been an act of disrespect, the elder said. It had been a decision, and decisions, once made by humans, were rarely reversed without cause. The royal argued that the human had overreacted. Insults were tradition. Strength was shown through testing others. That was how rulers proved authority. Another elder responded calmly. Humans did not accept tests designed to humiliate. They accepted challenges meant to build trust. The difference mattered. Outside the chamber, other species began to take notice. Diplomatic observers reported that human representatives were now more reserved in all Varelian-related discussions. Meetings continued, but with distance. Smiles remained, but warmth did not. A commander from the border fleets raised concerns. Human navigation support had been assisting in stabilizing several trade lanes. Without it, patrol times increased. Delays followed. Nothing collapsed, but the system felt slower, less certain. Still, no one panicked. Then a neighboring alliance quietly canceled a defense exercise. Their message was brief. Without human participation, the exercise no longer served its purpose. The young royal began to feel the weight of the court's earlier words. Power was not always loud. Sometimes it moved like water, shaping things without force. On the human side, Elias Ward was already on a new assignment. He was not praised, punished, or questioned harshly. His superiors treated his report as complete and sufficient. Human leadership understood something the galaxy often forgot. Respect could not exist where dignity was ignored. By walking away, Elias had protected not just himself, but the position of humanity. Other human diplomats followed the same approach. Calm, professional, careful. No insults returned. No demands issued. Only distance. Weeks passed. The Varelian economy did not collapse, but it shifted. Systems once supported by shared human technology now required internal resources. Efficiency dropped. Costs rose. Advisors grew tense. The young royal asked for records of past human encounters. Scholars brought ancient archives to light. Stories from early galactic expansion spoke of humans who endured mockery until a line was crossed and then withdrew entirely. One scholar explained it simply. Humans valued choice. When they stayed, it meant commitment. When they left, it meant they had decided something was no longer worth the effort. That idea unsettled the royal more than any threat. One evening, the royal stood alone on a balcony overlooking the capital. Ships moved below like slow stars. The city still functioned. The empire still stood strong. Yet something invisible had shifted. The royal realized that the insult had not weakened the human. It had revealed the royal's own inexperience. Elsewhere, foreign courts whispered. Some admired the human response. Others grew cautious. If humans could walk away from a rising empire without fear, what did that say about their confidence? An elder requested a private audience with the royal. This elder had seen multiple reigns and survived wars without ever commanding an army. The elder spoke plainly. Leadership was not proven by who could be insulted without consequence. It was proven by who could recognize a mistake and correct it before it hardened into failure. The royal asked what could be done. The elder answered honestly. First, understanding. Then, accountability. Humans did not respond to forced apologies. They responded to actions. That night, a message was drafted. It was not sent to Elias directly. It was sent to human diplomatic command. It acknowledged the meeting. It acknowledged the departure. It expressed a desire to understand, not to argue. The message was respectful, careful, and uncertain. Human command received it and did not rush to reply. Days passed again. During that time, smaller systems began to align themselves more closely with human trade networks. Not out of fear, but trust. Humans honored agreements. They did not mock their partners in public. The young royal watched as influence slowly shifted, not through conquest, but choice. Finally, a reply arrived. Human command thanked the empire for the message. They stated that humanity valued cooperation, but only when it was built on mutual respect. Further discussions could occur when all parties were ready to meet as equals. No blame was assigned. No demands were listed. The royal read the message several times. There was no anger in it. That made it harder to ignore. The court convened again. This time, the atmosphere was different. The nobles were quieter. The elders watched closely. The royal spoke with less certainty, but more thought. The royal acknowledged that the first meeting had failed. Not because of weakness, but because of misunderstanding. The human had not been defeated. He had chosen dignity. Some nobles resisted. Others nodded in agreement. The empire stood at a quiet crossroads. Far away, Elias Ward looked out at another unfamiliar sky. He had not been told about the message yet. He did not need to be. His role had already been fulfilled. He had shown the galaxy something simple. Humans did not need to raise their voices to be heard, and the silence they left behind could change the course of empires. What had first felt like a small pause now touched many layers of daily life. Trade routes still functioned, but delays grew common. Research stations worked, but without the speed they once had. Patrol fleets adjusted schedules, yet gaps appeared where human systems had quietly supported balance. No alarms sounded, no crisis was announced. Still, everyone felt it. The young royal sat in the high council chamber as reports continued to arrive. Each one was calm in tone, careful in wording, and troubling in meaning. Costs were rising. Cooperation from other species was thinning. Invitations once quickly accepted now came with long delays or polite refusals. One noble spoke sharply, blaming human pride. Another demanded stronger measures. A third suggested issuing a formal command for human return. The elders listened, then raised a single question. What if the humans refused? The room fell silent. The empire had power, fleets, and influence. But forcing cooperation from humans carried risks no one wanted to speak aloud. Humans did not respond well to pressure. History made that clear. An elder finally spoke. Humans had not left in anger. They had left with clarity. That made them dangerous in a different way. The young royal listened closely. Gone was the confidence of the first court meeting. In its place was something new: awareness. Outside the capital, smaller systems made choices of their own. Some redirected trade toward human-aligned routes. Others delayed agreements with the Empire, waiting to see what would happen next. No one wanted to stand on the wrong side of a quiet shift. The royal requested another review of the human envoy's actions. Not the insult. Not the departure. The behavior before and after. Scholars explained that Elias Ward had followed protocol perfectly. He had shown respect. He had not raised his voice. He had not accused or threatened. His silence had not been weakness. It had been restraint. One scholar said something that stayed with the royal. Humans believed words lost value when spoken without respect. When that happened, they chose actions instead. That night, the royal could not rest. Standing alone in the private chamber, the royal replayed the moment again and again. The insult. The silence. The human turning away. For the first time, the royal asked a difficult question. What kind of ruler insults a guest to feel strong? The next council session was different. The royal spoke first. The royal admitted that the first meeting had been mishandled. Some nobles protested. Others waited. The elders watched closely. The royal continued. Authority did not come from belittling others. It came from knowing when to listen. The human envoy had not challenged the throne. He had protected his people's dignity. That statement alone caused tension in the room. One noble accused the royal of weakness. Another warned that apologizing would damage the empire's image. An elder answered calmly. An empire that could not correct its mistakes was already damaged. The royal made a decision. A formal invitation would be sent to Elias Ward. Not a demand, not a command, an invitation. It would acknowledge that the first meeting had failed. It would request a second meeting under equal terms. No public speeches. No tests. No insults. Some nobles resisted. Others remained silent. The decision stood. The message was prepared carefully. Every word mattered. It did not ask for forgiveness. It accepted responsibility. When the message was sent, the court waited. On the human side, the invitation moved through several levels of review. Elias Ward was finally informed. He read the message slowly. It did not flatter. It did not excuse. It did not shift blame. That mattered. Human leadership discussed the request at length. Trust once broken was not easily restored. Still, the invitation showed something: new growth. Elias was asked for his opinion. He answered simply. He would attend. Not because the empire asked, but because the moment could shape something larger than pride. The return journey was quiet. When Elias arrived again at the Varelian capital, the atmosphere had changed. There was no grand procession, no watching crowd. The escort was respectful and restrained. Inside the court chamber, the arrangement was different. The throne platform remained, but the space between it and the envoy's position was smaller. The distance was symbolic. The young royal entered without ceremony. The court was silent. This time, the royal spoke first, and differently. The royal acknowledged that the previous meeting had failed due to poor judgment. The insult had been unnecessary. The silence that followed had been deserved. There were no excuses. Elias listened without expression. He did not interrupt. The royal continued. The empire valued cooperation. But cooperation without respect was meaningless. The royal accepted that lesson openly. Before the entire court, some nobles looked uncomfortable. Others looked relieved. When the royal finished, the court waited again. Elias spoke. His voice was calm and measured. He said humans did not seek dominance. They sought partnership. When dignity was ignored, they chose distance. When respect returned, they were willing to listen. That was all. No accusations, no demands. The meeting ended without celebration. But something important had happened. In the days that followed, small changes began. Advisors returned cautiously. Talks resumed slowly. Nothing rushed. Nothing forced. Other species noticed. The story spread across the galaxy, not of an insult, but of what followed. A ruler who learned. A human who walked away, then returned without bitterness. Elias prepared to leave again. His mission was not finished, but it was no longer stalled. Before he departed, the royal requested one final private exchange. No audience, no record. The royal asked how humans learned restraint. Elias answered honestly. Humans had learned the cost of anger. Silence, when chosen carefully, saved lives and futures. The royal nodded. The answer would be remembered. As Elias's ship lifted into the sky, the capital below looked the same as before, but the empire was not, and the lesson was clear. Human strength did not always arrive with fleets or fire. Sometimes, it arrived by walking away, and sometimes, it returned only when respect was ready to meet it. Across the Varelian Empire, officials noticed small but important changes. Human advisors returned to shared stations, not in large numbers, but carefully. Trade routes reopened, this time with clearer rules and equal authority on both sides. Joint research resumed, slower than before, but stronger in trust. Nothing was announced as a victory. That was what made it different. The young royal stood before the High Council once more, but the tone of the chamber had changed. Nobles listened more closely. Elders spoke less often, but with greater weight. Decisions were no longer rushed to impress others watching from beyond the empire. The royal had changed as well. Where once the royal spoke to prove strength, now words were chosen to build understanding. The memory of the silent human turning away had not faded. It had settled deep, becoming a guide rather than a wound. Other species noticed. Diplomatic channels across the galaxy shared the same quiet observation. The Varelian Empire had not been forced into change. It had chosen it. And the humans had not claimed credit. That silence spoke louder than any declaration. Elias Ward continued his work, moving between systems as before. He did not seek attention. He did not speak about the past meeting unless asked. When questioned, he described events plainly, without pride or bitterness. To many young diplomats, human and alien alike, Elias became an example, not of power through command, but of power through restraint. One day, a message arrived from the Varelian capital. The young royal requested a public session not for ceremony, but for record. Observers from multiple species were invited. The session would not be about agreements or trade. It would be about acknowledgement. Human leadership considered the request carefully. After discussion, they agreed. Elias was asked to attend once more, not as a representative of strength, but of principle. When he arrived, the court was full. Foreign delegates filled the galleries. Scholars prepared records. No guards stood with weapons drawn. The atmosphere was calm and focused. The young royal entered and took position before the throne, not upon it. This alone caused quiet surprise. The royal spoke clearly. The royal stated that leadership required learning, not just authority. That a mistake had been made in the first meeting. That the insult had not tested human weakness, but revealed royal immaturity. The words were simple. Honest. The royal continued. The Varelian Empire would no longer use humiliation as a test of strength. It would judge partners by actions, not by how they endured disrespect. Then the royal turned to Elias. The royal thanked him not for returning, but for walking away when respect was absent. That choice had prevented greater damage and taught a lesson that could not have been learned through conflict. The chamber remained silent. Elias responded with a respectful bow. He did not speak long. He said humans believed mistakes were part of growth, if faced openly. He said cooperation was strongest when both sides protected dignity, not pride. That was all. The session ended without applause, but the record would last forever. In the months that followed, the change became clear. Other empires adjusted their own practices. Some quietly removed outdated rituals meant to provoke. Others revised how they treated new species entering galactic affairs. Humanity's position grew, not through conquest, but through trust. The young royal continued to rule, still learning, still growing. Advisors noticed that difficult decisions were now met with patience rather than fear. The royal asked questions instead of issuing challenges. The empire became more stable. Years later, a new generation of diplomats studied the incident as part of standard training. They learned about the insult, the silence, and the consequences that followed. They learned that humans did not shout to be heard. They learned that sometimes, the most powerful move was choosing not to play a game designed to degrade. Elias Ward eventually retired from active diplomacy. He returned to a quieter life, never seeking recognition. When asked about his greatest achievement, he always answered the same way. He had protected his people's dignity without harming anyone else. On a distant world, the Varelian royal older now, wiser, stood on a balcony overlooking a peaceful capital. Ships moved smoothly through the sky. Trade flowed steadily. Alliances held firm. The royal remembered that first meeting clearly. The sharp words, the silent response, the moment everything changed. That memory remained a reminder. Power was not proven by who could be insulted. Power was proven by who knew when to walk away and when to return. And across the galaxy, humanity became known not as loud conquerors or silent observers, but as a people who understood something rare. Respect, once broken, could only be restored by choice. And silence, when chosen with purpose, could reshape empires.